Hey everyone, welcome. We're still going to give folks a few more minutes to come on in. We still have folks entering in the wait room, and so we'll get started shortly. Thank you so much for being here. Happy Friday, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Excited to close out the week this week. Hopefully, get you all the information that you all need. I see some familiar faces on here, so welcome back. We're going to give folks a few more minutes. So thank you again for being here. We're going to get started. Just maybe like one more minute, give a few more folks a chance to roll in, and then we will get started. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and jump in if that's okay with everyone. All right. Cool. So welcome again. Today is going to be the application workshop. My name is Mars Rivas. I am the senior admissions officer here for the program. And then I'm also going to jump over to let Janine introduce herself as well. And then we'll dive in.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon, California time. I'm Janine Bernard. I'm the Associate Director for the Master of Engineering Student Affairs Program, and I'm excited to hear all your questions today.
Awesome. Thank you, Janine. I'm just going to rename myself real quick so that it doesn't just say Fung Institute. Awesome. Perfect. So welcome again. Today's goal and hope is to essentially be able to provide each of you more clarification on sort of the application process. I know that as we work through the materials, a lot of questions tend to come up each year. And so the goal is to try to answer your questions all along the way. If anything pops up that you are not familiar with, or maybe you need some more clarification on, you're totally welcome to shoot the question inside the chat. And then we're going to have both Janine, Maritzi, Nabiha, as well as some of our current students here to help kind of field some of those questions if they're able to. And then we'll also try to leave some room at the end of the presentation for Q&A. And so, yeah, let's get started. All right, so most important thing right up front is definitely going to be necessary dates. So the application for the MEng program is currently open. That opened at the beginning of September. And so your deadline for this upcoming cycle for the fall 2026 is going to be January 7th, 2026. So you still have a little bit of time to go ahead and submit those materials, but I definitely encourage folks to go ahead and get started now. So if you haven't already and you're interested in submitting, we're definitely going to have you create your Grad Apply account through Berkeley. All right. So some of the admissions requirements, like upfront, are definitely going to be, it's going to be really important that you have your department and your concentration of focus outlined. So with Berkeley, you're actually only allowed to submit one application per cycle. And so if you're still toying with some ideas, if you're still kind of trying to figure out exactly what it is that you're going to do, that's totally okay. But the important thing is going to be that you actually have the department and the concentration selected and outlined prior to submission. Once you formally submit that application, you're not going to be allowed to make any changes to that. So it's going to be really important that you have that information decided up front. The next thing that we're going to ask for is going to be your academic history. And so we do require transcripts, but they don't have to be official for the sake of submission. So anything that is unofficial will do for your undergraduate experience at this point. We're also going to ask for your GPA, and then I'll go ahead and cover that in some more slides down the way. We're also going to cover what it means to submit your test scores. If there's anything that I can provide a little bit of comfort on, is those of you who are not submitting to IEOR, you do not have to worry about the GRE. So hopefully that's like one thing that you can take off of your plate. And then we do also require test scores for either the TOEFL or IELTS if you are an international student or if you graduated from an institution that was not primarily taught in English. Two other requirements that we have are going to be your essays. We're also going to break those down towards the end of the presentation, and we're going to talk about the differences between your statement of purpose and then your personal history statement. We're also going to cover the letters of recommendation and what is required of you, as well as your resume and CV. All right, so perfect. First steps are going to be to go ahead and create your application through the portal. So if you haven't already, you'll want to go ahead and do that through the gradapp.berkeley.edu /apply. And so once you actually get to that section, you've created your profile, then you're going to opt for your term. The MEng program only takes once a year. And so that's going to be for the aid year of 26 and 27. So just make sure that you opt for that. And then when you actually go through to select your program section, this part is also going to be important to kind of take some time to focus on because we do have multiple programs that fall within the College of Engineering. If you know that MEng, your one-year fast track program, is the option, then it's going to be important that you actually select Master of Engineering and not Master of Science in Engineering. Those are two different programs. And I'll go through and sort of outline that whenever you're selecting your drop menu as well. And then anything inside of that application menu, if you see an asterisk on it, that means that that section is absolutely required in order for you to move forward. So just kind of be mindful of what those things look like inside of the application portal. All right, so a little bit about that, which program that we're touching on. So once you get into your actual grad app, this is sort of what it's going to look like. And then you'll actually have the ability to click on your drop-down menu and opt for the appropriate term. If you opt for the incorrect term, it's probably not going to allow you to select the areas of focus because it won't align. So make sure you're opting for fall 2026 and then whichever program of yours within the 7 departments that you are going to choose, that's going to be in this next drop-down menu. Again, the application, oh, that was an old date. That's going to be 1/7/26, and the cutoff time will be at the same time, 8:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I put this on here because you'd be surprised, folks wait till the last minute. I don't recommend doing that, but just in case you're one of those people, just know that the cutoff is not going to be closer to midnight. So it's going to be really important to kind of keep that in mind, especially if you're in a different time zone. All right. And so once you get into the next portal, it's going to give you all of the outlines of what comes next. So if you get stumped on anything, if you get stuck, you can always reference these tabs and it will drop you back into the section that you need to go to. But once, oops, my bad. Once you click down on the MEng programs, it's going to actually outline like exactly which ones you are choosing. So your primary option is going to be which area of focus and which sub-concentration you want. Again, once you formally hit submit, there's no going back on this. So definitely make sure that you have all of the right options selected. It is easy to get in a hurry or to sort of like use that little scroller on your mouse. So just make sure that you've actually opted for it. Double check it before you go through and formally submit. All right. So academic history, this is definitely something that is going to be needed to build out your application. So when we talk about submitting your unofficial transcripts, it's going to be for everything that is considered your undergraduate work. If you have completed another master's degree or another program somewhere else, okay, cool, include those transcripts as well. But this is for any undergrad institution that you've attended. So even if you pick up an unofficial transcript and it is from your undergrad institution where you actually attained your degree, if on that transcript it still shows like, oh, I received credit from a community college or I transferred from this other institution, then we do require that unofficial transcript as well. And so we just want to make sure that we can account for all of the courses you've attended, all of the places you've attended so that we can have the most accurate picture possible. All right. And for our international student transcripts, you're definitely welcome to upload again an unofficial copy. And then as long as it just shows where your degree was conferred at, it shows like the date that it was conferred, those things will all count. And then we also want to ensure that you are mindful of the grading scale. So if it looks a little different, make sure that you scan both, like the front and the back, so we can account for all of those things within your application. And then for specifically the academic records that were taught in a different language, they may require a translation. And so if that is the case, then you're welcome to submit through the necessary portals, but it will ask you for that information as required. And so if again that it is taught in a different language, you're welcome to use any of these American Translator Associations. If you also have maybe like an unofficial copy of like your WES evaluation, things along those lines, that will also work to be able to upload your materials. And then you're welcome to upload them as they are. And so again, we do not require an official transcript at the time of application. So in this particular moment, you don't necessarily have to worry about like paying for that official like WES evaluation. Just make sure that you're uploading the copies of those materials. And then if in the event that you're admitted into the program, then we will request official documents at that time. All right. And so folks definitely want to know about like where should I submit, which GPA should I put in, and we do our best to break it down for you. Okay, so the cumulative undergraduate GPA is going to be your overall GPA, and you'll simply want to put them exactly as they're outlined on the transcript. So if you have that cumulative overall GPA, look for that at the end of the transcript, and you can enter that here in the first box. Um, you also have the option to enter your GPA courses for your major or your field of study. This is really, really helpful, especially if you're somebody who maybe has like a little bit of a different story. Let's say maybe you didn't do so hot in maybe like your first or second year of your undergrad, but then you did really well, in the third and fourth year of your program. Great. Some of those courses are specific to your major, and that would actually be helpful in allowing us to paint a picture. So make sure that you're also accounting for your GPA in your major field of study. It just sort of, like I said, it helps paint a picture, especially if you're somebody who is maybe working with something different in the background. What I always encourage folks to do is not to assume that we're always going to be able to connect the dots. If you can make the picture as clear as possible, that will allow us to jump through the different sections of the application to be able to put those pieces together. So just a gentle reminder of like not to make any assumptions. If you're not sure if it's clear, if it comes through, then that may be a good flag to remind you that it may be worth putting a little extra information into the application. Oops. And then same here, if your intended field of study was not like in your major for your undergraduate degree, then you're definitely welcome to calculate those GPAs for those courses and then go ahead and submit them here. And then this next section is also going to be very important because if your GPA falls on a different grading scale, I know folks have been confused on whether or not they need to submit a GPA calculation themselves. And so if for some reason you're stumped on that, let's say that your GPA scale is on a 5.0 instead of a 4.0, totally okay. Just enter in your GPA is that exactly as it shows on your transcript. What will happen is that if the department requires something additional from you, then we'll reach out and ask for that advanced undergraduate GPA. We'll ask for the calculation sheet, and then you'll be directed to your department so that you have the specific instructions necessary. But again, if for some reason it's not outlined on a 4.0 scale, totally okay. Just enter in that GPA here on the other scale GPA. Awesome. So test scores. So again, just gentle reminder that the GRE is only required for the Industrial Engineering and Operations Research Program. So if you are not submitting to any of those programs, you do not need to submit your your GRE. If you submit it, it's not going to like hinder or help your application because it's not required. So therefore, it won't be reviewed. So you'll want to make sure that if you do require those things, that you're going to submit your code 4833 to ETS, and that will automatically send your scores to the institution. And the same thing, same exact code for the TOEFL and for the IELTS exam. If you are somebody who requires English language proficiency, then that is how you'll be able to submit your official test scores and things along those lines. And so just remember that the minimum score should be at least a 90 for the internet-based test. And then if you are taking the IELTS, it doesn't necessarily require the code submission, but you do need to have an overall band score of a 7 on the 9-point scale. And so any of these scores will automatically be sent to the institution. One of the things that is common during the application cycle that I see is that folks have multiple email addresses, which is totally okay. Some folks end up submitting or creating their profile with maybe like their personal email. But then when they take the GRE or they take the TOEFL, they may register with a different email. That's not uncommon. So if for some reason you notice that your scores are missing, but you know for a fact that you submitted them, totally okay. Just shoot us an email at the Fung Institute, and then we can also do some research to see if maybe potentially your scores got submitted with a different email, and then we can merge those things together. So don't panic if you don't see them there. Totally okay. We can always handle that in the background. But just a gentle reminder that sometimes that does happen. So it's okay to be proactive and to shoot us an email at the Fung inbox. Awesome. And then folks also have questions about exemptions. So if you do attend an institution in a country where the primary language is English, then there is a possibility that you are exempt from the TOEFL or from the IELTS exam. But all of these exemptions run through Graduate Admissions Division. And so they're not necessarily questions that we can be like, oh yeah, there's an exemption. So if you're not sure or if you need clarification on this particular question on whether or not you are allowed to be waived, then I would definitely recommend sending an email to graddiv at gradadm@berkeley.edu, and they'll give you more specifics on whether or not you are eligible for exemption. Awesome. So the essays are definitely going to be a huge, huge component to your application. And we do have two different essays that we require for a complete application. And so those are going to be both a minimum of 1,000 words or less. And then your statement of purpose is going to be the thing that you use to describe your long-term goals, your career goals. What are you hoping to get out of this program, and how is this particular program going to help you move forward in attaining those goals? Is there a particular area of focus, a community that you'd like to serve? All of those things are going to really build the picture about your why. And so when it comes to the statement of purpose, I encourage folks to think about why you're doing what you're doing. Why are you submitting to UC Berkeley? Why is the Fung Institute the best program for you? One of the things that we see a lot as admissions folks is that people tend to make very generalized statements and then they plug in the name of the institution that they're submitting to so that they can cast a wide net. And sometimes that is not necessarily the most helpful thing because we can't get an idea of like how exactly that's going to align with our program, with our mission. And then the same thing for the personal history statement. A lot of folks want to know what it is that they should say. There is no right or wrong thing that you should say. The thing that we're looking for is, are you answering the questions and are you going to be able to outline who you are as an individual, what background you've come from, what that means to you, and then how you're going to make those connections to your purpose. So it's really important to outline those two essays separately and to also make sure that you're not regurgitating any of the information that maybe you have on your resume or on your CV. Sometimes that can be wasted space because we already have a document that's outlining your experience. So I always encourage folks to use your statements as opportunities to hit harder on your, whether that be your purpose or whether that be your background, to actually build out that picture for us, because we can gather the things that are on your resume. I would encourage folks to write about the things that are missing. A personal history statement is probably a good opportunity for folks to outline maybe you had a tough run your first year. Maybe you are a first generation student and you didn't quite know how to study. That might be a better fit for your personal history statement than it is for your statement of purpose. And so we're going to have a breakdown session of the writing workshops so that we can actually go through what the statement of purpose and the personal history statement looks like on a deeper level. And that session is going to be next week on Monday. And so if you're free for that, you're welcome to sign up for that as well. And we'll go into more depth and detail about these two statements. All right, so for your statement of purpose, again, this is kind of going to be an opportunity to outline your areas of interest, your passions, like what areas you're hoping to go for or to have your work highlighted in. The statement of purpose is also a really good opportunity to sort of plug in any of those gaps. Maybe there was some breaks in between your time. Maybe you took an opportunity or some time off to gain more experience. How has that particular experience prepped you for what you're going to do next? And so I think sometimes being able to make those connections within that statement is going to be really, really helpful. And no one of your experiences is going to be exactly the same. So I encourage folks to really make that personal. Help us kind of figure out who you are. How do you stand out? How do your goals stand out? And I think being able to clearly convey your why is going to be a big part of getting your point across and getting the committee to be able to understand why you're such a good candidate for this program. So when you're thinking about your statement of purpose, it's always the why. Why am I here? Why do I want to do what I want to do? Um, why is it now? Why is the timing for this particular degree best for me in this moment? Um, and yeah, I would say don't necessarily regurgitate information, not just on your resume, but also like from our website. I think sometimes people think that um, they want to tell us what they think we want to hear, and that's really just a missed opportunity for you to outline more of your experience. And so again, maximum word count is 1,000, and then I always recommend multiple sets of eyes on any statement, whether that be your individual statement of purpose or your personal history. Many eyes. You'd be surprised at all the little things that we miss by our training, and so maybe even asking recommenders to take a look too may be beneficial to you down the way for your recommendation letter as well. And then we kind of touched on the personal history statement. So again, anything that's relevant and specific to you as the individual, your background, what things have you overcome? That doesn't necessarily just have to mean that it's been hardship or like access barriers. I think there are many ways for folks who also don't necessarily come from those backgrounds to also be able to outline their connection and history to the mission. And so that's also about what things maybe you've been involved in. What things have you attained over the years, learned over the years that are going to give you new perspective, that are going to allow you to consider other people and how you're serving others. So if you aren't somebody who is necessarily considered um, like an underrepresented minority, or maybe that wasn't like your particular experience. It's totally okay. That's not the only deciding factor. I think there are many ways to make the connections to, serving others, your growth, your leadership skills, all of those things. And so, yeah, again, there's no right or wrong thing to say. I think it's really about making it specific to you, tying in all of those important pieces, and then being able to answer those questions for us. How do you stand out? What are you going to do with that? And what has led you here essentially to this point? All right. So tips for both essays, again, making sure that you have many folks reading your essays and going over them, making sure that there's not a lot of overlap. We don't want the essays to repeat themselves because, again, missed opportunities. So if you have folks look at them, maybe one person reviews your statement who is better with organization and structure, and then your next person that reviews it is better with, punctuation and grammar. And then maybe somebody else has a different set of eyes that maybe it's still not making sense to the third person. So how do we make that flow and transition smoother? Um, I think another great thing is, like I mentioned earlier, giving your recommenders an opportunity to read it, because that's also going to help them outline like what your goals are and how they can speak to you and your experiences when they are drafting those recommendations. So perfect segue. The EECS department is the only one that requires three letters of recommendation. But for your application, you are going to need two. In order to have the portal fully submit your application, even if you only require two letters of recommendation, you will need to essentially opt for yourself to be that third letter of recommendation if you're submitting to any of the other departments. So you won't submit a letter of recommendation yourself. What you'll do is you'll put your name inside of there, you'll put your email, and then you'll just put like NA for not uploading a third recommendation, and then that will allow you to move to the next screen. Um, but your recommenders will be notified as soon as you put their information into the portal. So you don't need to do anything like outside of that. I would say communicate with them ahead of time so that they know to expect the email and so that they know and have plenty of time to submit a recommendation on your behalf and something substantial. So if you're like, my recommendation would be to communicate with them now. Let them know that you are already drafting up an application to submit to this program and that their recommendation letter needs to be in by the same deadline as your deadline. If you submit all your materials, but your recommendation letter didn't make it in by the 7th, unfortunately, it won't be considered complete. So I definitely recommend like submitting all of those like reminders, emails, text messages, however you're communicating with your recommenders, start to do those things now so that you're at a place of only submitting reminders to them. And then you can have all of those materials ready to go. Um, and then we definitely recommend waiving your right to those letters. It is the best, and I would say most, what's the word I'm looking for? It's best practices for us. So just ensure that you are waiving your rights so that all of those materials can get in quickly. If not, they're going to require additional steps of approval, and we don't want to see anybody miss their deadline or their submission because of that. So best practices always recommend waiving your right to your recommendations. And then just make sure before you submit everything that you know, sometimes we move fast, sometimes we type fast. So just check for typos, make sure you have your recommenders information in accurately, correctly, so that they're also notified and aware of like what they're supposed to be expecting. Also remind them to check their spam or their junk folders because sometimes the emails do go there. And then we just want to ensure that, again, like everything is correct so that you're not scrambling at the last minute to complete an application. Some other important pieces of information for your recommenders. Yes, while we do, encourage folks to have, like a professional recommendation and maybe like an academic recommendation, I think more than anything, it's really, really important that your recommenders actually have a relationship with you and know you, and can submit something, substantial on your behalf. A lot of times folks may think that we want like the academic reference so bad that it doesn't really matter who it comes from. But I have seen, academic references like submit two sentences because they really didn't know the applicant very well. And so I would always encourage folks to reach out to supervisors that you have a relationship with, reach out to your instructors that you do have a relationship with so that they can really speak on your skill sets and on the things that you are good at, on the things that they have firsthand experience with you. And so I would definitely say too, like if you're not in, regular communication with folks, that's definitely something you want to be doing. Just checking in with them, letting them know that you're still, thinking about the things that you studied with them, or like you still want to stay in touch so that you can continue to develop this relationship. All of those things matter. And they go a lot further when folks can actually speak to your individual experiences and they know you. I think a one-page letter goes a heck of a lot further than just like two sentences of like this person took my class once. So just it's something to be mindful of. I think it's also important to share all of your info with them. So not just your statements, but maybe potentially your resume, and then letting them know exactly which programs you're submitting to so that they know, what to speak on. The last thing we want is for a recommender to be like, hey, they would be such a great fit for, and then they name a different institution. So, just make sure that you're kind of also giving them enough time, enough heads up to review your materials and get something in on your behalf. And then the other thing that we ask is that they use their professional email address and that they use letterhead so that we know exactly where that's coming from, who that's coming from. If in the event that something gets stuck or you're having a hard time like getting the reference to go through for the request, reach out to one of us and then we can guide you on how to potentially like get around that. But for the most part, we definitely encourage folks to use letterhead and professional email. In the event that like something is not working, there may be room for an exception. So just let us know if that's something you're having trouble with. And then department awards are also going to be really important, especially as you're drafting up your application materials. So there is going to be a section that allows you to opt in for these things. And I know we touched on that on the last general information session, but just to go over that again, some of the department awards that you can expect or that you can know that we have available are going to be the Dean's Full Scholarship. We also have a Dean's Grant opportunity. We have the Fung Excellence Award, which is a merit-based opportunity. And then we also have the MEng Opportunity Grant. This is going to be for folks who are require additional funding, like if you're somebody who is experiencing financial hardship or anything along those lines, you'll definitely want to submit for this opportunity. And then those ranges can be anywhere between $1,000 to $30,000 for the duration of the year. And so when you get to this particular section of your application, it's going to be important that you actually submit all 5 sections of the department grant application in order to be eligible. And I am going to outline what that looks like next. Okay, so when you get to this section, you're going to see A, B, C, D, and E. E is not listed on this one. I'm going to show you E on the next screen. But you'll need to fill out each of these components completely in order to be considered for the opportunity grant. And so I'm going to break that down as to what that looks like, but make sure that you do everything. So like from applicant information down to personal resources, they're going to ask about what that looks like how much funding you're going to be expecting from maybe your job, how much money you as an individual have saved. Um, if these answers are zero, it is so important that you put the actual number zero. I'm going to say that again. If you are getting zero contributions from anyone, from zero from your family, zero from your job, zero from your own individual savings, you have to actually type in the number zero. If you leave it blank, we are going to assume that the application is incomplete. So please put zero or whatever that hard line number is inside the application so that we can take all of those factors into consideration. Blank does not mean zero to us. So if this number is the same for your family and your sponsored resources, hard line zero. Other resources for the academic year, hard line zero if you are not getting resources. Then we're going to jump over to section E. So once you've made your way through all of these 4 sections, the next one that's going to populate is going to be section E, Opportunity Grant Essay. You need to fill out all components A, B, C, D, and E in order to be eligible for this. Once you get here, this is going to be a short essay sort of outlining your circumstances. Anything that you may have gone through, if you come from an international country that is not your background or your resources are not going to be the same, input that here. If you are a first generation student, if you have multiple family members who are attending college and you are one of a few, all of those things matter. And so we really, really, really need to know what things are going on in the background so that we can do our best to ensure that you are considered for all funding that you are eligible for. Okay, I'm going to jump back to this screen right here. If any of these personal resources or family sponsored resources or other resources for the academic year are zero, please input a hard line zero and do not leave them blank. Give us a short explanation here so that we can ensure that your application is being considered for grant opportunity funding. Okay? Does everyone understand that particular piece? If so, give me like a thumbs up or like a reaction. You don't have to turn on your camera, but I just want to make sure that folks understand that. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. All right. So I shouldn't see any blank essays in this section when we get here. Okay. So just we want to make sure that everybody has access to the most funding possible. We understand education is expensive. We know that, this is an investment in your future. So don't shy away from that. Just as somebody who has done that firsthand, that was something that I didn't know. And then I was afraid that if I input something that it was going to reflect negatively on me. I promise you it won't. Even if your family is only able to offer up a little bit, even if it's only like, oh, my family has only been able to save like $500, that's okay. Still put that number in there. Um, because it takes all things into consideration. And so if, and same on the other end, if you have a job or an organization or somebody who has offered to fund, your application, an employer who is funding that, totally okay. You're allowed to put that in here so that we can see and we know what other, folks are going to be having resources so that we can also make sure that it's fair across the board and that those who are requiring resources are able to get access to them. All right. We're going to jump over to the application fee now. So this particular component is going to be outlining your payment and ensuring that your payment is received by the deadline. So you'll be able to use either a credit or a debit card. And then if you end up qualifying for a fee waiver, you're going to have to make sure that you communicate all of that information to graduate admissions or grad div. Again, the Fung Institute is not responsible for individual fee waivers. Anything that is going to be approved for a fee waiver will need to go through grad div and grad admissions. And so once you get to this particular piece, then you'll be able to input your information here and submit your application fee, and it'll move you on to the next screen. If you are a current UC undergrad or you are a UC Berkeley alum, you will be eligible for a fee waiver here. If you are a Cal resident and you are an alum or an undergrad of either any UC system or any CSU system, you will also be eligible for an application fee waiver. But again, the requirement is specific to those who are Cal residents and are UC Berkeley or UC system alum and CSU system alum. And then once you get to that screen, typically what will happen is it will allow you to submit your application if you're eligible for the waiver. Um, I wouldn't recommend assuming that it's automatically going to be input. So just in case that it's not, and just in the event that you're worried that it may not be, I would always recommend going to the fee waiver page and reaching out to grad admissions first. And then they can ensure that all of the requirements have been met. But if you know, like up front, that you meet all those requirements, totally okay. Go through and submit your application. You'll be able to do so without payment. And then typically the payment portal will populate about 24 hours after you submitted your application because then it'll go back and request payment from you. And typically once all of the criteria have been met, then you'll be allowed to move on to the next page. It's not uncommon for folks to say, hey, it didn't request a payment for me at the end. That's most likely because you were eligible for the fee waiver. And then if for some reason you're concerned that you're not and it still didn't request a payment, let us know. We can make sure that all of those things are eligible in the background so that you're not ruled out. And then again, the process to complete it is going to be January 7th, 2026. So just make sure that, again, if you have any questions about the fee waiver, that you are reaching out to GradDiv. This was a little bit about the process that I explained earlier. So you're going to be able to select the credit card option and it'll move through that page, but you'll actually be able to submit your application without formally paying. So just as long as you communicate with GradDiv about the fact that you're awaiting a fee waiver for those reasons, everything else should follow suit. All right. So what happens after you submit and you've paid your fee, everything is locked in and you're ready to go. Okay. From that point on, you will be able to log into your portal and you will be allowed to check your status. So you can see, have my test scores been received? Are all of my letters of recommendation in? These are all the things that you can still do from that portal, but you won't be able to make any changes or additions or edits once you formally submit. So please make sure that before you lock in your payment and before you lock in submission, that you have reviewed everything a couple times through, because if something is missing, we can't do anything about that once it's in. So just ensure that you're taking your time, working through that a little bit at a time. Give yourself, I would say start your applications now, give yourself some time, give yourself some weeks so that you are not scrambling at the last minute, and then leaving room for error because we're moving too quickly. So again, the earlier you start, the better. Give your recommenders and everything like that time. But you will be able to reference your application. You'll be able to kind of see where it's at in the process. But again, you won't be able to make any edits. And then we anticipate that notifications on decisions will definitely go out before mid-April. We definitely try to get our folks the decisions as soon as possible. I will give the heads up that if you are submitting to mechanical engineering or electrical engineering and computer science, those are our two largest departments, and they do take the longest for review. Um, all applications are reviewed at the same, like once the application deadline closes. So there are no rolling admissions. Applications are not reviewed in that way. We wait to review everything until all deadlines have shut and all applications have been received. So just anticipate that if you're submitting to a larger program, it may take a little bit longer than April. So just a gentle heads up in that regard. All right, and so this is an overview of everything that we've covered. So this is the application checklist, and it breaks down everything that we're looking for a complete application. So just a reminder that that's going to be a statement of purpose and a personal history statement with a 1,000 word maximum. That's going to be your current resume or your CV. And then we do require 2 letters of recommendation, 3 if you are applying to electrical engineering and computer science. And then we do recommend that they include at least one former instructor, and maybe one potential supervisor. But again, always encourage folks to request folks that have a good understanding and good working relationship with you and can actually speak to your experience. Your transcripts, again, are allowed to be unofficial. And we want to make sure that all of your college level work is accounted for on those unofficial transcripts. Your degree certification and translated copies only if necessary, and then your test scores if you are submitting to IEOR. That's the only one that requires the GRE. And then your TOEFL and IELTS scores if you have completed your background from an international institute, or if you're an international student where the primary language was not taught in English, then you do require the TOEFL and IELTS. And then your application fee, again, is required in order for your application to be considered complete. And then if not, if you're waiting for a fee waiver, then we need the proof of documentation so that your application is also considered complete. And then at that time, having all of those materials would allow you to be ready for submission and review. And so that's the overview. Again, we're going to have a breakdown next week of the statements, and the breakdown between the two, and that will be a more in-depth presentation of what that looks like. And so that sums up our application workshop. And so what I'm going to do is try to leave like the next 15 minutes to try to field your questions. Happy to go back on any slides if you'd like me to leave them up. And so, yeah, so we'll go from there. And I will also reference the chat box as well. And yeah, let's see what we got.
So before we go to Edward's hand, I just have 2 things that came up in the chat that I wanted to touch base on. So one, Mars, could you clarify a little bit? You mentioned about applicants waiving their right to review the recommendations and additional steps needed
Yeah,
if
let's,
they did not waive their rights. Yeah, that one. And then, yeah, so we can answer that one. And then I have one more question and then we can go to Edward.
okay, perfect. Here it is. And so clarification on waiving your rights, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay, so what that means to waive your right is essentially if you opt for this, if you opt out of it, you're essentially saying that you want permission to review your recommendation letters before they're actually received and considered like officially received in our application portal. So what we mean by that is that in order to ensure fairness, that we recommend waiving your right to review it. It's just best practices because it also keeps things fast tracked and we aren't waiting for that. And also, we want it to be as fair as possible. And so, throughout Berkeley, we have practices that we try to ensure fairness across the board. And this is one of those practices, which is why we recommend waiving that right. If you don't waive the right, what I mean by a second step is essentially that it's going to ask you to like review your recommendation letter. And I believe there's a next step to say, like, okay, I saw it and now I approve it and now it's a go. But if you don't know you've done that, that can potentially delay your application review and potentially make you incomplete if you didn't know you opted for that in the first place. So just a gentle reminder that that's what we mean so that your recommenders can get their materials in quickly and then you don't have to worry about the next step. So that's what I mean by that particular piece.
Okay. Great. That's super helpful. And then last question is the awards, the department awards, are they merit-based or need-based?
Both. So
Okay.
departmental awards are both merit-based and need-based. And so you will automatically be considered for all merit-based scholarship opportunities simply by submitting your application. And then those things will be reviewed by like the individual department and all of those folks. They'll be broken down. Each department is allotted like a certain amount of money that they're allowed to award to their student population. And so that's how we go through and we ensure like fairness that, you know, each department is getting their designated amount of money. And so merit-based, you'll automatically be submitted for. Anything that is need-based, opportunity-based, you will only be considered for that if you go through and you complete these components of the application. So if you are somebody who is, you know, hoping for, you know, additional support because maybe you require some additional services or resources in that regard, you have to complete this section in order to be eligible for the need-based opportunities.
Great. Thank you. And now, Edward, go ahead.
Thank you. My question revolves around if you had two undergraduate majors. The first part of that being, how would you fill out the GPA section? If maybe we could go back to that slide and maybe answer specific on that.
Yeah.
And then the other would be a smaller question, but just what I would write for like the degree name when I'm specifying the degrees I receive for these majors.
Okay. What I would say is if you were a double major, my recommendation would be to take the average of both and submit. That's what I would do. Just because if you're a double major, I don't know exactly how that would be calculated. My other recommendation is instead of averaging it and like making a calculation on your own, I would probably opt for like the higher GPA and then put your whatever major you had the highest GPA in. I think that would be my recommendation. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Because yeah, for me, I have, and they're separate degrees as well. So one would be Bachelor of the Arts and the other would be Bachelor's of Science. So I didn't know if there was one that would be more applicable for the application. They would require that. So,
Huh.
um,
That's a good, you know what? Let me get some additional information on that one too. And then what I can do is also follow up with you on that because I want to make sure I get you like the most accurate information. Um, I know that people are double majors all the time. I just don't know how that would reflect on the, um, like on the GPA and like the course reflection on the transcript. So let me actually circle back to that. I think the great thing though too is that you're going to have a couple of other options. Like you have advanced GPA, you have GPA courses for the major field of study. I would keep your cumulative undergraduate GPA as what's reflected on your transcript. Um, and then I would definitely say that maybe for like advanced GPA, that might also be another area of opportunity. But let me get some clarification and then I can send you an individual email so that I make sure I get it right.
okay, great. How should I provide you my email or do you have that already?
I believe because you registered for this,
Okay,
I'm writing your name and your question down, but then I will have your contact afterwards. If not, shoot me a direct message in the chat, and then I'll also take your email down as well.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna jump down here to
We also have current students, our ambassadors on the call. So if anybody has any questions for them, and maybe how they navigated, go ahead, Ikan. Go ahead, Ikan.
Hello. Thank you for the presentation. It was really helpful. I'm just curious about like the split between like academic and professional for the letter of recommendations. Is it like 2 to 1 or 1 to 2, or how would you guys recommend that? Oh, Mars, I think you're muted. I see your mouth moving, but I don't.
Here was me just talking. Honestly, for the letters of rec, I feel like it is more important to ensure that somebody actually knows you well, as opposed to just trying to like make sure that you fill the metric for like the academic recommender and then the professional recommender. I feel like I would personally lean on folks that maybe you have a better relationship with,
Gotcha.
if that
Gotcha.
makes sense. As long as it's not like obviously a friend, like if somebody can
Mhm.
speak to like like maybe you volunteered for an organization and like you have a really good, you know, relationship with like the person who oversees that org, but maybe they're not like your actual supervisor. That's still somebody who you technically report to. That would still technically be a supervisor role on their part. And then they would actually be able to speak to your experience and how they see you interact on the daily. So I think it's more important that you have somebody who really knows you as opposed to like just trying to meet the metric.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Ikai. What else do we have?
Emmy Martin, I believe, was had their hand up.
Yes, thank you. So my question is with the GPA, if I'm an international prospective student, so I don't have that system in my country, so I don't have to fill that form of GPA as I understood it, right? Uh, of GPA advanced and all that stuff. But I'm
Right,
yes.
right. That's correct. So let me jump over to this screen real quick. Right. So yours is going to go right here in the other scale GPA. So this is where you would input yours. And then it would just leave it as that. So only in the event that the department, like, so I would, depending on what department you're submitting to, I would research that one in particular to make sure that they don't require anything additional. If they do require a GPA calculation breakdown, then you would be required to take on this next step. But that would be specific to the department. So just put your the GPA here, especially if it's not on a 4.0 scale and it comes from a different system.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm reading a question from Aisha. I've got, hello, I wanted to ask about the GPA for major courses. If that is not calculated by the school and what we only have is our CGPA, can I leave the rest blank? Uh, yes. So if for some reason like your major is not calculated out by the institute, then you're welcome to go to this general page, and I would leave this. I would enter here exactly as it's shown. GPA courses for the field of study, like if it's not outlined on there, totally okay. Like you don't necessarily like have to include that. I think a lot of these are just like specific breakdown, especially if in the event like you're trying to show us maybe like some different progress throughout overall. So like if let's say your GPA, for example, was like a 3.1 in the cumulative, but you had a really strong last like 2 years. This GPA would look lower like on paper, but this would really help us gain an understanding of like maybe your last 2 years of the GPA and of your schooling was sitting at a 3.67, so it's like then in that event I would really encourage you to sit down and make the calculation for the courses that are in your field of study so that you can make the most of your application. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. Perfect. Like I'll be real, my undergraduate GPA, like my first year was awful. And so when I was submitting to graduate programs, it made it really difficult because my GPA was sitting right there at a cusp of like the 3.0. But from being able to build that from like a 1 point something, wild. And so it really did matter that I took extra time to sit down and make those GPA calculations myself because I was able to pull up my course catalog and I was able to pull up like my outline for my major and I was able to see, okay, all of these courses fell underneath that. So technically from the time that I started enrolling in anything that was like kinesiology related, all of my GPA is now sitting at a 3.8. So if I would have just left that 3.1 or like 3.0 by itself, I don't feel like I would have been able to give the committee a good picture of the type of student that I've grown into. So I know sometimes it may feel like an extra step and maybe it's a little bit annoying. But if it's not specifically broken down on your transcript, then I would definitely would recommend like outlining your own courses for your major and then going ahead and putting those in because they can build a picture. Any other questions?
Hi. I want to add something to the GPA stuff because
Okay.
as an ambassador myself, I entered this program, but my first year of GPA is really low, like 3.0. So you can demonstrate step by step that how to improve the GPA. Since the second year and the third year, my GPA increased to 3.5, 3.6, and so on. So it's a great point to show the process that you increase your GPA and your study the whole process of your studying. So that's it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That is really, really important and really helpful. And I think another reminder that like not just here on this slide, but I think when we get down to here, personal history statement. So this is also like outlining some of the things that you may have had to overcome. Maybe you learned some things in the process of, those 4 years, 5 years that allowed you to sort of take on something different. And so the personal history statement doesn't just, it doesn't just mean like hard content. Like barriers mean a lot of things. They can mean overcoming all kinds of challenges, whether that be in the classroom, whether that be personal, so I feel like this is also a good area for folks to be able to sort of explain their growth and explain their trajectory.
Yes, I think that if you can show an upward trending trajectory, especially, I think sometimes they're going to look at classes that you took as well. So if your first year, general education courses or breadth courses in your undergrad, maybe those aren't the things you're passionate about. But once you get into the field of your interest, and then they see the upwards trajectory, I think that also shows your commitment and your kind of potential in that field. And we can discuss this. One more plug for the session that we have coming up on Monday. I shared that in the chat. It's 12 to 1. It's on our website as well. And we can get more into how you can really use essays to kind of fill in maybe some holes or explain your GPA and your trajectory better for us to really see the full picture of who you are.
Awesome. Thank you, Janine. And yeah, and I think that is also just like, our program is also not specific to like, you don't have to be an engineer in order to be eligible for this program. And so, I think that's also something to make the connection to as well. Like if you are a career changer, okay, great. Then let us know like what things you've been doing too within the meantime to build that. Like I've seen people go to community college and take on some like upper level, like math or upper level sciences so that they can kind of get up to speed. And all of that matters when you're building out your application to show what you've done to prepare up to this point. So yeah, many ways to talk about that. We are at time. I do see that it's 1. So I just wanted to thank everybody for being here today, for asking all of your great questions. There is no such thing as a silly question. So if we didn't get to something today, totally okay. You're welcome to shoot us an email at the Fung Institute general inbox. And then we're also going to have, again, another session on Monday that's specific to the statements. So if you missed anything, just let us know. And we're happy to try to answer those questions for you. And then we're also going to have current students on there as well.
And we'll repeat these 3 workshops in November and December. You can check our website on that for events and info sessions coming up. And then we will also make this recording available on our YouTube channel. It will just take us maybe 5 to 7 days to get it captioned, and then it will be there. So thank you so much. You all have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend.
Thank y'all. Take care. Good luck. Hope to see your application soon.